This bull run, guys, we are set to go exponentially higher than anyone ever thought possible. With institutions like VanEck, Vanguard, and BlackRock about to open up the floodgates with the ETH ETF, there's one question. What sectors in the crypto market are set to outperform Bitcoin by 300, 400, 500, upwards to 1,000%? Guys, this is King Wabi from Because Bitcoin. If you guys want to keep in tune with content like this, go ahead and smash that like button. Hit on to the bell notifications. I'm here with Trader XO. XO, what's going on, brother?
Hey, I'm good, man. Pleasure to be on, Wabi, for my first stream since January, mid-January. So it's a real pleasure to be back on the mic after a good few months out.
Perfect, man. So I guess we can start off by covering Bitcoin. So I understand you've got some pretty clean charts for us and some clean signals as far as what we can expect for alt season and all these sectors popping off, right? We have RWAs, AI, layer ones, and all that other good stuff. DeepIn is another hot one. So
yeah, so something that I've alluded to over the past few weeks is that, look, you know, typically looking at previous cycles, when we see Bitcoin go on a rally and then form a phase of consolidation, pull back in a range-bound environment, it really gives alts an opportunity to somewhat continue rallying even higher. So just something that I'm looking at here immediately is what stands out for me is that when we look at the structure of consolidation down here, Bitcoin obviously rallied fairly extensively. Now, these 25-30% pullbacks are not unusual in a uptrend. You can see we had one in here at the start of 2021. We had a secondary pullback phase round about March in 2021. Each one, you know, constituting between 25 to 30%. Now, considering where we are currently in Bitcoin, now we saw the last few weeks people talking about Bitcoin's going to go to 100K, 150K by the end of the year. Whether that does or it doesn't really concern me too much. I think really what I'm paying attention to is, look, if we do happen to have an environment similar to what we saw from January all the way through to May 2021, where Bitcoin was ranging between the highs of 65K down to 43,000 over several months. I think if we were to see a similar structure play out, I think that really would encourage me to go more aggressive on alts, you know, over the coming months, of course. But having said that, you have to agree that currently I think we have resistance around about the 68, 69K mark, the previous all-time high. Call it a deviation, call it an over, back under, whatever it is. Is this the shallow pullback, or do we get a deeper correction down to that 54, 53, 52K level, which would, again, like I said, constitute to or give a round about a 24, 25, maybe, yeah, about 25 to, you know, ballpark 25% market pullback, which, like I said, which isn't unusual. So we'll see what happens. We're just taking it one day at a time, 1 week at a time, and we just have to trade what the market presents.
I think the context, right, of this pullback might be a bit different compared to the other ones. I think, you know, back then we had things like Total 3, stablecoin market cap, exchange alts, and other leading altcoins break all-time highs. But it seems like this bull market, for the most part, as far as majors go outside of Solana, it's really been captured by BTC, ETH, and narrative with the ETF, and everything else has kind of just been very PvP, man. So what sectors are you predominantly looking at, man? Because I know we can talk technicals all day, but would love to break down some alts, man. I know you have some charts that you want to show. I think one of them is Dime. That's been a real grinder and really reminds me of how Jupe was launched on Solana, where it had an initial pump and then just seemed to go into a range and consolidate for about a month. So
yeah, so Dimension is certainly on my radar. It has been. If you look at this chart here, this is a 12-hour chart. If you just go to the daily, since it got listed, it's really not done a great deal apart from trade. The highs around about 850, and it's just been fairly range bound. Now, this is the first time that I've really taken a position in Dimension. When I look at these types of plays, I do believe that you get the initial listing pump, it sells off, you get the phase of consolidation, and then eventually, if the market is or does have a bullish appetite and that remains, what you generally see is price basing out and start shifting structure into higher highs and higher lows, and eventually you get what I call, or is known to be known as, a J curve. So you generally see that across markets, especially within the crypto space. When altcoins get listed in a bull market, you get the initial, it's kind of a three-stage aspect. You get the initial listing pump, slow bleed back down, base consolidation, then you get the bigger trend up. And you've only got to look at the likes of Jupiter, which is, you know, one that performed or has performed very well. It went through that phase, initial listing pump, phase of consolidation. I think it listed in January, so we didn't really start taking off until 2 months later. And you can see trading at the lows around about 45, 46, 47%. This is one that I caught, traded the lows, shared it in the timeline. Unfortunately, took profit perhaps a little bit too early, you know, at these range highs, but before you know it, it's rallied all the way to 150, given a very, you know, profitable 3x there. Another one that comes to my mind that followed a very similar structure was Pyth as well. So again, listing pump, slow bleed off. I think it listed in November. This is all the way back in January. It takes around about 40, 50, 60 days to give that base consolidation, and then you get the trend up. So again, when we think of the letter J, it's kind of like, there you go. That's the kind of structure. And this is not unusual. I do remember trading these structures back in 2021. And I was actually surprised as to how one can really latch onto, you know, 100 to 200% moves upon these listings. As long as the market's in a good state, as long as the fundamentals are strong on a coin, and there's decent volume, then it's got every opportunity. Now, one that we covered, and the one that Zoran and yourself covered last week, we all bought that, I believe, myself and Zoran did, at the lows. And again, when you just look at this has been a slightly more faster dynamic, I guess, because of we know that there's a real lack of supply of tokens on the market for NGO. So people who invested in this project, like myself, although we're investors, we don't have our tokens until much later down the line because of the long vesting schedule. So therefore, we know that if you look at the current market cap, I think when this listed was around about $1 billion. The circulating market cap was only 30 million. So there's a big disparity there. So immediately you're thinking, all right, if this can establish a low at this level here, which is essentially where we started buying around about the 140s, immediately that's given 100% move within a week. So there's fantastic opportunities. And this is kind of indicative of really good appetite in a bull market. These are the type of moves that you will see. Whereas in a market that's kind of subdued or going sideways, if we look at Siri, for example, when this got listed, you'll see exactly what happened. So look, this back in May doesn't do anything for the best part of 6 months, right? But you generally get that slow structure. Then you get the shift in market structure. There's your first higher high, taking out the previous high, higher low, and there's your shift in market structure trend to the upside. So again, slow bleed down, fast rally up is essentially. So again, when we look at Dimension, just to go back onto Dimension here, I think this is going to hopefully, we hope this gives a very nice trade setup over the coming weeks. But again, just depends on what Bitcoin does and the broader market in that respect.
You know, these things tend to lead off the backs of other narratives, right? So with something like a Pyth, right, that's a sector that you can compare with to Entangle, right? I know they're doing a lot of things in the DePIN space and Oracle space and all that stuff. So you think to yourself, right, if Pyth is doing well, then the stage is set for Entangle. And with something like Dime, right, you really have to look at some other L1s, right? So, and I know you mentioned Sui there, which is about to break out off of its listing price, but we've also got things like Say, if you want to pull that one up. I think that's another clear example of how Dime can move with it being beta in the L1 space, right? So there's still certain things that need to be hit for some of these more lagging alts to really catch trend. And I think one of them would have to be Ethereum breaking all-time high. How are you looking at things, man, when it comes to things on ETH, man, and just ETH in general from a price action perspective?
Yeah, so with Ethereum, it doesn't come as a surprise to me in the sense where you look at ETH BTC, it really hasn't done a great deal during the turn of events from October, where Bitcoin was at $25,000 at the start of October or late September. Bitcoin has obviously gone into new highs. Ethereum somewhat lagging, but it's something that I was aware of again from the last cycle, and I picked this up from the 2017 cycle. if you look at Bitcoin in 2021, let's just focus on where Bitcoin was in March. So let's clear the charts. Bitcoin in March 2021, towards the end of March, was trading at around about 60,000, close to its, previous all-time highs. But if you look at Ethereum, Ethereum was down here on the 22nd of March 2021. So clearly, Bitcoin obviously ran from late September in 2020 when Saylor was buying Bitcoin at 10,000. It broke past the previous all-time highs of 2017 in January, went on to 60,000 by the time March 2021 came around. But if you look at Ethereum, just kind of surpassed the all-time highs, but then Ethereum really took off.
Yeah,
there's a real lag. And if you look at the ETH BTC chart, if you just look at that period of March 2021, look at where ETH BTC was. Just still, there's your high time frame range. On this was the 21st, 22nd of March. And it wasn't until that last week in March where Ethereum really took off on an aggressive rally, whilst Bitcoin was fairly subdued in a range-bound environment for several months, and alts really kicked on. And now when I look at ETH BTC once again, well, guess what? We've been in this range-bound environment since the start of October, fairly much in line when Bitcoin took off and many altcoins took off very, very early. But Ethereum BTC, or the ETH BTC chart, really hasn't done a great deal. And when I look at this, I think this is a real solid base structure forming here. For as long as these lows hold, I don't mind price breaking down one more time and then reclaiming the level to see continuation higher. What would give me concern is if price breaks down and failure to get back inside of the range would lead me to some cause for concern. But until that happens, this is one chart that I've really been keeping my eye on very closely in terms of where I think we could see continued upside on many altcoins which have yet to run. I think we've seen many of the favorite or the new shiny ones, the Says, the Sues, OP's had a good run, Arbitrum has had a good run, but we know there's many coins that came out in 2021, 22, 23 that have yet to experience that full cycle to the upside. So again, I think there's plenty of opportunities that could lay ahead of us. So we'll see what we get.
What do you think the value prop for Ethereum is this cycle? Because, truth be told, man, a lot of people would rather just go on something like a Solana or something like a Say to go on and speculate on DeFi and things like that, right? Do you think things like Athena, right, and they're building their own Ponzonomics with EUSD and yielding and all that stuff, or things like Eigenlayer, right? Are you looking at fundamental events like that to kind of supercharge Ethereum against Bitcoin?
Not only just projects and DeFi, but I think I tweeted earlier today that once ETH BTC starts catching a bit, I think we will see a real interesting merge again into DeFi on ETH. RWAs, real world applications that are being built up on Ethereum start kicking off again. But to me, the biggest driving factor is, look, the Bitcoin ETF got approved. Believe it or not, I don't think people are aware. Maybe they are aware, but if you look at Ethereum, there's already an Ethereum futures ETF. So the only delay, I guess, is the SEC trying to classify Ethereum as a security. I'm not sure how much longer they can do that, because if Ethereum is a security, then why was?
I don't think that's going to happen, man, because
no, I don't.
Yeah, because dude, you had Larry Fink. For those of you that don't know, Larry Fink and his guys on BlackRock, they deposited $100 million onto a hot wallet, and it's just sitting there in USDC. And when we think about RWAs, XO, I think Ondo is a pretty clear leader in the RWA space. I know there's also things like C-Pool from last cycle that's been bouncing off of the lows pretty quickly. But full disclosure, I do hold some Ondo from a lot lower. Shout out to our Discord. And Ondo just kind of had this this sort of meme, right, where one Ondo equals one condo, one Ondo equals $1, and it's recently hit an all-time high earlier today of pushing just below 80 cents. And I know one of our astute fans, Avocado Toast, has been leading the charge on Ondo, man. They've got something called Ondo Markets. where essentially it's going to be able to tokenize the stock market and all that stuff. But just look at that, man. What a beautiful chart. Yeah, what are your thoughts, man? And even that initial price action with Ondo on the 4 hour, it reminds me of Dime a lot, dude.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I hate making comparisons of fractals, but I feel as though Dime is somewhere here. But I think you have to appreciate that Ondo is currently at a 1 million market cap. 1 billion market cap, with the FDV at 7.5 billion market cap. I think when you look at Dime, just having a quick comparison on the charts here, again, Dime is at 6 billion FDV. So, you know, I think in terms of Ondo, it's done really well. And I think if RWAs are to catch on, then who knows where the highs are. This could continue going higher. And I think that the real factor here is with Bitcoin breaking all-time highs, and if Bitcoin can catch a bit, maybe post-halving, then who knows, right? There's room for the total market cap to surpass that $3 trillion level, maybe go to 4 or 5, and you know, so in terms of valuations of market caps, you just can't really second guess where price is going to be. You just have to go with the trends. And eventually, when you start seeing signs of exhaustion in the market on the altcoins, when you start seeing altcoins being listed on exchanges that don't really perform well, collectively across the board, that's probably the first telltale sign that, you know, things aren't quite bullish as perhaps they have been. So I guess that's just one of many ways to identify what the current sentiment is in the market. But I think Ondo looks great, yeah.
So when it comes to sentiment, right, this is an election year. I know this is something that me and you have spoken about, but this year is pretty pivotal. I think it's going to be the first time where you have the U.S. election really talk about all things crypto. And so when you have things like BlackRock, which in my opinion, again, this is probably going to sound like dubious speculation, I think hedge funds and people in the finance space, they're the ones that play all the dirty politics in the background. And I'm kind of the opinion, XO, where it's like, pay attention to what they do, not what they say. And so if you have Larry Fink pull up, you know, $100 million straight into a MetaMask, where like probably two 22-year-olds that are interns at BlackRock control the multi-sig, it's kind of like this is the first time where we're going to have pro-crypto sentiment going into an election. Former President Trump has released 2 NFT collections. He's starting to embrace Bitcoin. And, you know, from the other side, the Democratic side, they're not really talking about it. But either way, it doesn't really matter. It's just the fact that this is going to be coming into the forefront now that older generations can bid Bitcoin through things like iBit, and even you know, they're going to be able to speculate on ETH through the next ETF, which should come no later than Q2, man. So let me ask you this, man: how are you feeling about, you know, the embrace of all things you know, digital assets and RWAs coming on chain and all that stuff? And yeah, man, because I'll be honest, bro, last cycle nobody really had, you know, any idea that, number one, you know, the ETF would be successful on launch and also with such rapid inflows, right? I think we've had inflows of like 2 billion plus per week. And, you know, last quarter, people were saying, oh, if we at least have 100 million per week, then it would be pretty bullish. And, you know, we're doing 10 times the amount of that. So what are your thoughts on all those things? I know it's a bit more of on the fundamental side.
Yeah, I think the Bitcoin flows have certainly been very interesting. We saw record ETF inflows for Bitcoin. I have some notes here. I think, including myself, it surprised many people by the real flows coming into the ETFs. You know, there was many speculating on the fact that once the ETF goes live, there's probably going to be a short spike up and then sell off, a larger correction back down to 30K. But clearly that's not been the case. And I think when you look at global markets are very much risk on, Bitcoin is very much risk on. So there's a real appetite for large institutions to, you know, get their clients exposure to Bitcoin. And I think the structural nature of Bitcoin will probably change in terms of volatility will dampen over the next several years as more flows come into the market. We probably see Bitcoin trading perhaps more like equities and NASDAQ, with a degree, you know, of some volatility, but perhaps not quite the volatility that we've seen over the last several years with Bitcoin. So I think it's fascinating to see. And again, observing and watching Bitcoin go higher, let's just assume it does break at the $100,000 mark. I think that's really going to be fantastic for altcoins and the whole entire space as well. We've seen a real difference, like you said, in terms of Trump and Biden. There seems to be very much a pro digital asset approach heading into this election campaign. Whereas in previous years, it was like, no, we don't like Bitcoin. But now there seems to be some level of acceptance and embracement of, technology advancements and how blockchain or digital assets perhaps might be the way forward, which sheds good light on Bitcoin, in my opinion. So, there's a real interest now in digital assets, particularly Bitcoin. But I think with Ethereum as well, I think it's only a matter of time before the ETF gets approved again, which is going to be great for the space. So a real level of maturity and acceptance of digital assets.
That's a great thing that you're pulling up, XO, Total 2, which is everything outside of Bitcoin. And I think that's something that we really have to keep in mind when we think, all right, where are we within the broader context of a bull market? XO, let me ask you this, man. What are your thoughts on this chart here?
Honestly, it's it's looking good, if I'm honest with you. It's, I mean, I don't mind pullbacks, 20-30% corrections, which we just saw. I was very aggressive buying altcoins. I publicly talked about the fact that, these are some really good buying opportunities here. You want to see Bitcoin range. You want to see altcoins give you that 20-30-40% correction, which we saw. TIA pull back 40%. If you look at NXRA, which is another RWA that I'm holding since 6-7 cents, that was trading 19 cents last week. It gave a pullback all the way back down to 11 cents. It's back up to 18, 19 cents. That's, a fairly good move back up in a short matter of time, as much as 3 days. So when I look at this chart, I'm thinking, well, as long as we are respecting that $1 trillion level, I don't mind price coming below it, but as long as we're holding this pattern here, there's every possibility then we could push up into that 1.3. I think the minute we see some form of consolidation, similar to this structure here, where price comes back, consolidates, and then we get the thrust up. Once we get into this upper bound, it's clear skies all the way up to around about that $1.7 trillion. And I think that wouldn't surprise me, given the fact that, look at what Bitcoin has done. It's just blasted up to 69K, went to 75. It just feels as that total 2 and total 3 is lagging. And I think what I'm really looking for in this instance, what would support my thesis, the fact that this will kick on higher, is quite simply going all the way back onto ETH-BTC. And if we see ETH-BTC catch strength, then I think it's highly probable that total 2 and total 3 will really kick on over the next 3 to 4 to 5 weeks, maybe heading into the halving. I think we've got a good window of opportunity heading into the halving. We know from a macro perspective, all talks of recession have been pushed all the way far back out. Inflation is rising. The Fed is obviously fairly dovish. So I don't really see any immediate risk. Obviously, there's always a chance of some risk coming to the market. But other than that, I think the appetite remains fairly good. The sentiment's fairly positive. You look at NVIDIA, you look at NASDAQ, you look at equities. Yeah, they may give a 10, 15, 20% pullback on any given week, right? But I think those pullbacks are going to get bought up very quickly. But really, what would change my whole idea is if we start seeing structural breaks, if we start seeing the formation of lower highs and lower lows, which doesn't look like happening just yet for the next week or so. I think this is holding really well. This is the first corrective leg that we've had. So again, if we just range in between 1.6 and 1.25, I think we'll see many alts that have been lagging for the last 2-3 months really come into effect. Whereas the ones that have already run, they're probably just going to cool off a little bit more, a little bit longer until they have the day.
So let me bring up this key data point, man. What you're showing me really looks how Bitcoin was shaping up to be when the ETF first got launched, right? And April 2022, March 2022 highs for BTC was at 48.2, and the ETF high right when it got launched was at about 48.9, right? So if we go back to total 3, right, I kind of think that we'll probably retest that probably have a little pullback, right? And then it's just off to the races. And we probably have some massive escape velocity type of move where it breaks total 3 and total 2 by like 5-10%, and then it dips back down, similar to what Bitcoin is showing us, right? I feel as if Bitcoin is printing out the cycle ahead of time of total 2 and total 3, right? Like if you want to have an idea of how total 2 and how total 3 might move from here, just take a look at Bitcoin, right? I think total 2 is probably where Bitcoin was at once the ETF got launched, where it has a slight pullback. And I think total 3 is right along there with it. So I think, going into April, I think we might see a violent move. And, a lot of people are talking about a quicker cycle, but Exo, I want to show you, I want to ask you this. Do you think this cycle is different in broader context? A lot of people are speculating, the macro cycle is going to peak in Q4. It's going to end in Q1, when, usually if we go by prior cycles, as far as like the broader context of the entire crypto market, I'm talking total 2, total 3, all that good stuff that we like to play in the altcoin space, that usually doesn't start to form a top until right about the second half of Q4 of the post-halving year, right? So what are your thoughts on that, man? Because, when I look at something like this, I mean, it's about what, a 60-65% move from here to touch those highs, and that's going to take a lot of work, in my opinion, man. Just take a look at all the work we had to do to come off the bottom. You know what I'm saying? So it's going to take a lot of work, man. Running from 100 bill to half a trillion, that's nothing. But going from where we are right now to over $1 trillion, that is a lot of work. That is a lot more money, man. So what are your thoughts on that, brother? Like what is your perspective for this cycle? Like what does your muscle memory say, right? Not what the charts say, not just charts, but like your own intuition. Like, do you think this time is just going to be the same? I kind of feel that, like, when we get into this mindset of, this time is different, the cycle is going to be extended, or the cycle is going to be a lot quicker. I kind of feel that we're getting too ahead of ourselves. And, my dubious speculation is that last cycle, the reason why we went so parabolic so quickly is because right when the COVID crash happened, everybody was getting a ton of money. Everybody was getting unemployment of $2,000 to $3,000 a month with access stimulus, with ZERP and QE. Whereas this time, monetary policy isn't as easy, but at the same time, you have all these institutions bidding in. And of course, you have the new passive buyers coming in, people that just go onto Coinbase and Kraken and start dollar cost averaging. So it's kind of painting a structure, in my eyes, similar to 2015 to 2017, where it's a slow grind up and then the dips get bought up like that, right? In 2017, I know the market was a bit more younger, so the volatility was a bit more, I would say more disastrous to the downside, but within a few days you'd be up immediately. So
yeah, look, for me it's very simple. I'm not going to overthink the market. So in 2022 I call the market really well because I had my concerns about macro. In 2023 I was very defensive for the best part of 9 months. I was pretty much trading defensively. I didn't know whether there was still a risk of recession. Clearly, that's passed by now. And I think when you look at this market for what it is, if you look at equities and NASDAQ, there's a real appetite for risk. So I'm honestly just keeping it very, very simple. I'm not trying to guess whether this is like the 21 cycle or whether it's like the 2017 cycle. All I look at is the chart, what's in front of me, and just trade price. Keeping it very, very simple. So that's the one key difference heading into 2024. Admittedly, I made a few, I wouldn't say mistakes.
Heading into Q2 of 24, not heading into 2024.
No, I mean, like initially heading into 2024 myself. Oh. Yeah, I took a a less lenience towards macro, although I enjoy understanding what's happening in the bigger picture. You've got to look at the chart ahead of you and the opportunities ahead of you. And the key thing for me, this is what I love about the crypto space. Every time Bitcoin goes on a run, you just know there's an abundance of opportunity in altcoins. And throughout the last 8 years that I've been in the crypto space, it's the altcoins where I've exceeded extremely well. It's the altcoins where I've made the bulk of my money. It's the altcoins where I hit those 100x's. So, you know, could I have done better on Bitcoin in 2023? I put my hands up and say, yeah, absolutely. I'm a trader at the end of the day. We don't get everything right. I got a large chunk of 2021 right. I got a large chunk of 2022 right. I preserved my cash. I was fairly defensive. People think it's bearish. It's just me preserving my capital. But when it's time to put my foot on the gas, which has been the case since the turn of November, December, January, February, March, I'm heavily playing altcoins. Not really interested in what Bitcoin does, because if you look at Bitcoin, yeah, it's a very good asset. It's purely great to see all this speculation and interest from institutions coming on board. But for me, the real opportunities are in altcoins where, like you said, Bobby, you bought T at $2, you sold it at 20. That's a 10x. If you bought Bitcoin at 15, 16, 17K, and okay, best case scenario is 3.5x, but you're requiring a lot more capital to get that 3.5x. With, you know, if anybody's got a small account, I just don't think Bitcoin is worth playing. If you're looking for those big gains fairly quickly, I think you have to look at coins that are in the top 200, top 300 that can go very quickly to perhaps number 215 coin market cap that can go to the top 50. Look for those that have that potential to really get close to that top 50. And I think what you did with Tia was a fantastic example of that, right?
Yeah, because with Tia, right, like you had the narrative being told to you throughout all of 2023, right? Like the market was showing you how there's a demand for new L1s and things like that. And so, you know, me and Max did a video on Sol back in September. I think it was September 14th, December 15th, where Sol was trading at about 11 to 13 bucks. And we were discussing how like Ethereum is basically just going to bleed out through the majority of this cycle against some of these newer projects, right? And even with things like Solana and what have you. And so with Tia, it was sort of a no-brainer. And you know, now that we're a few weeks out from the halving, I'm kind of looking at the Ordinals ecosystem and BRC20s. And one project that I really want to talk about just for about a minute, just to plug it in here, give some alpha for the listeners that are listening here. So if you guys are enjoying this, by the way, go ahead and smash that like button. And feel free to leave any comments for any content that you want to see here, and I'll do my best to facilitate that. I'm going to be uploading content here every Saturday and Sunday here on the Because Bitcoin YouTube channel. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button and turn on bell notifications, as this information is very, very time sensitive. If you guys have been in crypto for at least a year, you'll know that crypto, you know, one day in crypto is like entire quarter in the real world, right? Things are ever evolving. But these rotations happen very, very quickly. You know, just when Tia peaked out, we've had 3 rotations happen after that, right? We had the AI to meme coin rotation, and now it's the RWA. 3 narratives, you know, changing like that in the span of a couple of weeks. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button, guys. And you know, I think
Bobby, I've got a question for you before we touch upon inscriptions, which I think is a really exciting sector, one that I've really been paying close attention to. But just to give the user some sort of idea, I think when you and I were talking back in October, did you or did you not shift most of your portfolio into Tia, and you literally went all in at $2?
Yeah.
Like how much of your portfolio did you shove into Tia? Was it 80-90%?
Yeah, it was like 90+%, man.
So you had no Bitcoin, no Ethereum, just purely based on Tia.
Pretty much, man. I think at that time, all I had were these tokens, right? I had Tia, I had Prime, which has done phenomenal, by the way. Prime pulled off a 10x on me with like pure, like exceeding my expectations, right? With some of these alts, man, sometimes you'll have bags that just 20, 30x on you if you just don't fumble the bag, right? And you just let it do its thing. But yeah, I had Prime, Crown, Tia, and then Neon, which again blew my mind, just completely blew my mind. And yeah, Tia and Neon were probably the best trades that I've had in the entire crypto space,
Yeah.
just from a sizing perspective, right? Because like anyone can say, "Oh, I made a 10x, I made a 20x, I made a 30x," but it's all size
Size.
relative, right? Did
Size.
you go in with 5%? Did you go in with 10%? Like with all these meme coins, right? If your net worth is 100K, you are not going into a meme coin with 30,000, 40,000. Like you're just not, right? For the most part, like people are really only using like 5%, 10% at best when it comes to these low cap meme coins, right? So yeah, man.
But what you did goes back to my point.
Yeah.
When I look back at 2023, could I have been more bullish on Bitcoin or positioned into Bitcoin, perhaps played it better? Yeah, I could have, but do I have any regrets? Absolutely not. Because again, had I bought Bitcoin at say 20K, right, fine, it's trading at 60K, that's a 3x. Well, guess what? I put a lot of money into some altcoins, which cumulatively over the last 6 to 9 months, unrealized, I'm sitting over 100x. PAL, Banry, NXRA,
Catan.
Crown, Katana.
Yeah,
What
man.
else is there? We had a nice little trade on. Well, we shouldn't really confess, but we did. We bought 0x or OX, and we round about the penny and sold it for 2. So, there's been some great plays. You look at NGL, that's another 100%. I bought RSR, that's another 100%. So, do I really look back and think, shit, I wish I bought Bitcoin? Absolutely not. But the one thing that Bitcoin does show me is that when it moves first, when it breaks out, that is the time to start getting into altcoins. And for me, being defensive, come October, November, I went all into altcoins. And
yeah. And usually, like when the market is trending to the upside, and I discussed this on my previous live stream. I live stream every Thursday here, but on my previous live stream, me and my guest Big Cheds, we were going over the fact that when we take a look at the crypto markets when they trend to the upside, the good majority of the upside volatility happens between Q1 and Q4. And EXO, if you can pull up this one chart for me, man, if you can pull up INJ on its USDT pair, I think the viewers will have a better effect of what I mean by this. So if you go back to the yearly open of INJ, right, for 2023, you'll see that like I think it opened up at what was it, like $1.20 there. Yeah. So if you pull it up more towards like a weekly, I think weekly would work better instead of monthly. But like what I'm trying to say is that the majority of INJ upside volatility for the first half of 2023 occurred in Q1. And then it basically did nothing, absolutely nothing against BTC and ETH or even on its USDT pair until Q4, where it finally broke out of $9 and then it pulled off a 5x. So, when you're in these markets, you have to realize that what you hold could actually peak out against other sectors earlier in the cycle. And this goes back all the way to Chainlink, right? If we pull up Chainlink BTC, right, that's another thing that we can look at. If you go back to the bottom, right, December 2018, January 2019, on Link BTC, you'll see that it just went on this monstrous bull run for a little over 18 months. And then it's just basically been down only against Bitcoin, right? And a majority of other alts that were trending throughout the 2020, 2021 bull market. So, when you hold an asset, you have to pay attention. When is this asset trending? Is it trending as everything else is below all-time high? When ETH is below all-time high? When Total 2 and Total 3 are below all-time high? Because there is a strong possibility that your token could bleed out against the rest of the market once Total 2 and Total 3 break out. And we saw that with Chainlink, right? It just went on this monstrous tear and then eventually peaked out. But it's recently
again. Yeah, I mean, when you look at these coins like Chainlink, if I'm a Chainlink holder, I'd be very annoyed because, all right, fine. Look, I personally thought Chainlink could have gone lower to $4-3 maybe, but at the end of the day,
it hit like 480.
Yeah, I mean, I said that look, if Chainlink goes to 2 or 3, I'll buy. But buying at $4 or $5 and it goes to 15, that's 3x. So
Yeah.
the, it's like the whole aspect of diminishing returns to the upside. The higher your cost price, the less multiplier you're going to get. So really, I really look for those trades that are going to give me huge multipliers. So again, had Link again, it didn't, but had it come to $2, I probably would have shoved a good chunk into Link because 2 to 20, well, that's a 10x, but
Yeah.
5 to 20, that's a 3-4x. It's like
pulling off a Tia. That's what everybody is.
Exactly. So it's like you've got to pick like look at the possibility of where or what price a project is and what your upside is and what your multiplier is going to be. And so that's why I went after Vanry. Vanry, I picked up at literally rock bottom at 2 cents because I'm looking at the chart. And this is the beauty of this market. There's so many opportunities yet that exist out there. If I just do Vanry USD.
Yeah, I sold.
Literally.
I sold my Vanry for Tia when it released onto the market. I let go.
Fair enough.
But it's so strange, dude, because like you'll have these rotations happen, and then it's like what you rotated out of eventually does pump. And so it's like crypto requires you to have a team around you, right? Like if I had like more people in my head saying like, yo, Wabi, don't forget this, don't forget that, I would have paid attention. But there's so many things within the gaming sector. It's kind of hard to catch them all, man. But yeah, dude, Vanry, by the way, guys, their old ticker was TVK. And yeah, they've recently undergone a rebrand.
Yeah, this has been one of my favorite trades because it's one of my favorites because it's one that I shared on stream and publicly, like literally bought at the rock bottom 2 cents, and it went to nearly 40 cents just last week. So again,
a clean time. Yeah.
Yes, that's a 2 to 240. That's literally a 20x there. So you know, I'm still holding all my tokens. I'm looking for much higher if we are in a bull market, and sometimes in spot bags, you just have to accept that you will see periods of drawdown. But I still do believe at this moment in time, again, my views can change from today to next week. But at this moment in time, I feel as though we're going through a phase of consolidation before we see prices push up on higher heading into the halving. That's kind of my approach. That's my outlook on the market. Again, as a trader, if I see risk, I will flip very quickly the next day. The minute I see risk or downside potential, I'm happy to cut the trade and get out or short the market. So currently, we're just holding within this range here between 25 cents to 38. Ideally, I don't really want to see this go any lower than 22 cents. So, you know, hoping for this is the next reaccumulation phase. So generally what you get, trend, reaccumulation, trend, reaccumulation. And this is where most people will likely get shaken out. If price comes here, they'll probably start puking down here and then price reverses. If you really wanted to take profit, it should have been at these highs all these weeks here. Okay, this is where range trading comes back into play. This is where you may want to take some profit or cut 1/3 of your bag, pay yourself a small amount, and then when price comes back into this region here, this is where you start becoming more aggressive and you're looking to attack the market as opposed to think, shit, it's breaking down, I better get out of my position because I don't want to give all my gains back, versus mindset of, all right, let me take a quarter of my position off, because clearly there's a level of resistance, and if it comes back down, I can go back into this. That's more of an aggressive mindset. That's how I would be looking to trade this person.
Yeah, man. So you know, I think that's a pretty good segment to cover gaming, right? There's also Katana Inu and all that stuff, but you know, we were talking about inscriptions and all that stuff, and I think a good project to look out for that's going to be releasing, I think, next week is called BeFi. And the reason why I mentioned that is because, you know, within the ordinals and inscription space, a lot of these projects that raise money, they're raising at FDVs that are like 90-95% lower to the broader space, right? So you'll have like an L1, right? You know, an L1 that scales the EVM or whatever, right? And it's like, you know, they're finishing their raises at like 1 to 4 bill in FDV, and it makes no sense. And they come out into the market with such massive inflated valuations that, you know, the common person coming in with 2 to 4K into this market, they're not going to be able to make life-changing gains. They're going to have to look for newer projects that are trending, that release, you know, at like 2017 valuations, right? Like I know one project called Icon, ICX, Aeon, Wanchain was another one that came out later, like during the complacency leg before we went into the bear market. Dragon Chain, right? All these projects that did like 100x plus, when they went to TGE and went to the open market, their FDV was at like, you know, 30, 40 mil, right? So the possibility to, you know, do a 50 to 100x was there, but you're just not going to have, you know, dozens of L1s and EVMs achieve market caps of, you know, near 100 bill. That's just not possible. It's just not. And it's very few rare in between, right? Like if you look at the AI sector, how many of them are actually going to go to like 50 bill plus? Probably not many, right? Probably only a handful, because there's just so many sectors right now, right? There's ordinals and inscriptions. There's of course AI. There's gaming, modularity. There's RWAs. There's just so many sectors that are going to comprise of wherever we peak out in this cycle. So I think BeFi fulfilled their raise at like 7 mil FDV. So if you take a look at their Fjord or whatever, it looks like they'll be releasing at like 200 mil or 100 mil FDV or whatever. So that's about 90% less than all these other L1s that have come on into the market. So if you take a look at what's been trending in the BRC20 space, we've had things like SAVM do quite well. Mubi has done quite well. Ordi has done quite well. Track has done quite well. So I think that just adds confluence to, you know, a fresh chart into the sector. So, you know, we'll see how that all plays out. And BeFi is essentially building out a BRC20 marketplace. And they're doing some trading terminal stuff as well for all that kind of stuff. So I feel like they'll probably create less friction for those that are seeking to get exposed to the Bitcoin ecosystem. And I think that just adds confluence as to, you know, maybe saying that for 90% of this cycle, BTC will probably outperform ETH, because you're just able to do the same things that you are on ETH on Bitcoin, right? When it comes to dubious speculation, when it comes to all things altcoins built on the base layer, and also NFTs and things like that. But what are your thoughts, man, on what's going on a more fundamental basis in the BTC ecosystem when it comes to more risk?
I think inscriptions have only been out for about a year. So I think what we saw initially back in November, so it's quite fascinating to observe that inscriptions ran when Bitcoin was running. And I think that was just the first wave. I really do. And I think inevitably there will be a much larger second wave on inscriptions and BRC20s. So really excited. Honestly, very, very, it's one of the few sectors that I think has kind of gone off the radar on people's lists. And I think it's only a matter of time before people get, well, I wouldn't say miss out, but I think it will pull a surprise to the upside. When? I couldn't tell you. And that's the beauty of these markets. Timing it is difficult, but you've got to have some sort of exposure to these altcoins, to these narratives. You know, after the 2021 cycle, I said to myself that I'm only going to position in 6-7 altcoins, just really go for consolidated bets. But since the evolution of the crypto space and all these varying sectors, it's just so difficult to narrow the bag to just 6 coins. I've currently got exposure to 18 spot bags. 6 are in gaming, 3 are in RWAs, 2 are in DeFi. I've got synthetics as well. And then obviously I've invested in a whole lot of projects as well, but obviously that's probably another day, another conversation, because those tokens are in a vesting schedule. So I won't see most of my tokens until another 12 months. So really, I'm just looking at opportunities that are in the market currently, like inscriptions. And not only that, it's about keeping an eye out on projects that I've yet to list on the exchanges, because I think they will give some fantastic upside, whereby you can probably pull off 2, 3, 4x's inside of a month. It's not unusual. And I think that's what excites me more as a trader, playing those listings on the exchanges, watching the initial bleed, and then price takes off. We saw it on Jump, we saw it in Pith. I think Dime will do something similar, maybe a 2x on Dime. But yeah, there's a whole host of projects coming onto exchanges over the next few weeks. So it's just fascinating to observe. And I think, like I said, Bobby, as long as the sentiment is there, the appetite for risk on is there, and global markets are going higher, Nvidia's holding up quite well. Until the music stops, I'll keep hitting trades to the upside.
Yeah, man. I guess we can start wrapping up here. And the last thing I'll say is that, when it comes to new projects releasing over the next couple of weeks, I do want to drop some gems whenever I can. So, we're covering gaming right now, and I think Saga is going to do quite well. Exo, before we wrap up here, man, if you can bring up, I think it's X Beam, right? The chart for Beam. I think it's actually X Beam. Yeah, it should be Beam. Yeah, Beam X. I'm sorry, Beam X. So if you take a look at Beam right now, they're essentially a gaming studio. They're going to be hosting a lot of games. And I believe they're also doing some work with Avalanche as a subnet. But, the context that I want to paint out here, right, I'll go ahead and pitch Saga for about 20, 30 seconds is if you ask yourself, all right, I missed Beam. What's the next Beam? What can catch up as sort of a catch-up trade, doing something similar with partnerships and all that stuff? I think Saga XYZ, right? I think they're doing something quite well. They've recently partnered up with Prime, which is a token that I hold, and Prime is doing a lot of stuff in the AI and gaming space. Their game, they do have a massive cult in their cards and all that stuff, and they also have I think they have an upgrade. I forgot the name of it. I think it's called Colony, right? I think it's an expansion pack. So, the stage for Saga has been set already with things like a Beam, right? Just as how Solana set the stage for Celestia when it comes to a newer chain for speculation and all that stuff, right? So, Beam has done what, like a 5x recently off of the October lows that altcoins put in. So I think when we look at Saga, which is going to have a TGE next month, and hopefully BTC and ETH are a lot higher from here, I think Saga can do quite well. They're going to be a chain where you can dubiously speculate with a host of games that people are going to be able to play on. So it's like, I call the gaming sector XO like DeFi that people understand, right? Like real play to earn, and not just something like an Axie where it just farms the token and it just gets diluted quarter after quarter. But man, what are your thoughts on, I guess the last thing I'll ask you, man, is what are your thoughts on the virality effect of crypto in this cycle, right? We've had meme coins go crazy on AVAX, on Sol, on Ethereum, right? With things like Pepe. But then there's also gaming, right? And gaming has kind of taken a bit of a backseat, right? And all the attention right now is on memes and all that. And, from the way this cycle has been going, right, sentiment and all that stuff would tell us that there's usually a rotation back into quote unquote utility and value. And I think that's just going to go back to things that are viral. And I think crypto gaming and AI are one of those things, man. But what are your thoughts on that concept to onboard more people into the market?
Yeah, I think it could happen. As long as global markets hold up, as long as global liquidity stays fairly, elevated, then risk on. But a cycle is a cycle. With every cycle, there's going to be periods of downside, and there's going to be significant drawdowns at some point in the future. Is that going to happen anytime soon? I couldn't tell you. But all I do know is that looking at what's in front of me, I think there's continued opportunity to the upside. And if you're a trader like myself, then there's going to be opportunity to the downside inevitably at some point in the future. I think what people have to really look at is that if you are making life-changing money, pay yourself. In all honesty, like, don't try to aim even higher and go for a massive home run. If you've made life-changing money, then take some realized profits off the table, because who knows, in 2-3 months time, maybe not now, maybe in 6, maybe in 12, is the market going to be higher, or is it going to be significantly lower? That I couldn't tell you. But I think with anything, I think we see it far too often, Webby. We see people flash unrealized profits, become very euphoric, and then 12 months later, would have, should have, could have. So if there's a lesson to be learned, and I think many of us have experienced this, I experienced it in 2018 when I grew my account exponentially, and then I suffered a massive drawdown in 2018, which, touch wood, you know, I learned my lesson, and I just hope others don't fall into the same mistakes that we saw many people make in 2021, because at the end of the day, you know, we just want to see everybody succeed, but unfortunately that's not how markets work.
Yeah, there always has to be a loser for every winner, man. So that's what makes a market, man, no matter what markets you're trading. So, man, Exo, I want to thank you. Thank you for coming on. Guys, thank you for tuning in. If you guys have enjoyed this, go ahead and smash the like button, hit that bell notif to keep up with all of our content, and hit that subscribe button for more. My name is Wabi. I'm from Because Bitcoin.
Thank you for having me on, Wabi. I wish you all the best, and let's call it a wrap. Good luck to everybody.